Montessori and Pestalozzi by Laney Rogers and Allison Harrison. Montessori was born August 31st, 1870, and died May 6, 1952, at the age of 81. She was an Italian physician and educator, best known for her philosophy of education that bears her name and her writing of scientific pedagogy. Her work was heavily influenced by Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard, Italy's first female physician and surgeon. She received 3 Nobel Peace Prize nominations.
These are a few of the thoughts that go through my head.
Montessori education is based on the principles developed by Maria Montessori, who opened her first school for children of low-income workers in an apartment building in Rome in 1907. The school was called Casa dei Bambini, Home for Children. This first casa was furnished with a teacher's table, a stove, a blackboard, some chairs, group tables for the children, and a cabinet filled with materials that Montessori developed in her earlier career when she researched how to teach kids who experience some form of mental disability. Maria Montessori created the materials after she realized that students seemed to understand complex concepts better when they engaged all their senses. Activities at this first school included personal care, such as dressing and undressing, care of the environment, like sweeping, dusting, and gardening. Otherwise, they were free to move around and play with the materials. Montessori did not teach herself, but instead oversaw the classroom work of her teachers. Montessori observed that children showed episodes of deep concentration and multiple repetitions of the same activity. Given free choice, kids showed more interest in practical activities and the materials than normal toys, sweets, or other rewards. Over time, spontaneous self-discipline emerged. Montessori concluded that working independently, children seemed to reach new levels of autonomy and became self-motivated learners. She began to see the role of the teacher as a facilitator of young human beings who are free to move and act within the limits of a prepared environment. The goal? To grow children to become independent and responsible adults who share a love for learning. Soon after, Montessori herself and her ideas started traveling the world to inspire progressive thinkers and educators from all over. The inventors, Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison, became early advocates. Later alumni include Jimmy Wales from Wikipedia, author Gabriel Garcia Marquez, as well as the 2 Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Today, the term Montessori stands more for a method than a school itself. The fact that it can be used freely by anyone led to a great variation of schools. Educators all over the world borrow Montessori's name, insights, and materials to organize kindergartens, elementary schools, special needs programs, or even full 12-year curriculums. Some parents use it for homeschooling. The following characteristics are shared among most programs. Students are free to choose what to learn. Open classrooms that allow free movement. Use of specialized Montessori materials. Mixed age classes from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, or 6 to 12, so children can learn from each other. Uninterrupted blocks of study time, usually 3 hours. No grading or homework, and a trained teacher. Maria Montessori once famously said, "Never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed." What are your thoughts on Montessori? Please share your opinions in the comments below.
Montessori's contributions to education. In 1900, she became the co-director for the Orthophonic School, a school designed to train teachers to work with children of mental disabilities. She was able to implement a style of education that she felt was more focused on the natural patterns of child development, Her studies on special needs children inspired her to test her theories on children without special needs. The government of Italy gave her this opportunity. In 1907, she opened the Children's House, enrolling 50 to 60 children from poor backgrounds. Maria Montessori always said her greatest contribution was that she observed children and discovered their true characteristics and the true nature of their work.
Pestalozzi was born in January 1746 and died in February 1827. He was a writer and political and social reformer and also an educator. He was greatly influenced by Rousseau's naturalism education approach, and he was originally educated to be a clergyman. He was also very interested in helping the poor and making sure everyone had equal opportunities.
In today's educational landscape, it is quite common to hear a discussion of the concept of inclusion, or the idea that all students deserve equal opportunity regardless of any perceived difference. There are a number of talented and dedicated individuals who have fought to make that conversation possible, but perhaps one of the most dedicated was Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi. Pestalozzi, often referred to as the father of modern education, was born in Zurich, Switzerland, and lived from 1746 until 1827. Like so many other people who eventually find their niche, Pestalozzi's path to becoming an educational reformer was a bumpy one. He bumbled as a clergyman, a politician, and a farmer before combining his experiences and his passions to focus on educational reform. Actually, modern education should probably be thankful for Pestalozzi's early failures and struggle. These struggles and experiences are what shaped his views on educational reform. Pestalozzi's grandfather was a clergyman, and Pestalozzi pursued this path as well. In this role, Pestalozzi was able to witness intense poverty. Particularly, he was struck by the poor conditions of peasant children working in factories. In the 1700s, helping these people would become Pestalozzi's focus. His first attempt at reforming education would be the creation of a school for poor peasant children, known as Nyhof. This first attempt at reform focused on the production of goods as a means of obtaining financial stability. At Nyhof, children would receive an education funded through their own work. Pestalozzi believed that this education, focused on teaching these children to produce and sell their own textile products, would allow them to escape the clutches of poverty. Nyhof, however, failed financially, causing Pestalozzi to reconsider much of his approach. As this school failed, Pestalozzi was able to reflect on his philosophy. Through this reflection and a continued effort to reform schooling for the poor, Pestalozzi eventually developed his approach to schooling, now known as the Pestalozzi method. The Pestalozzi method is a whole-child approach that emphasizes the development of all aspects of a person, including the head, heart, and hands. When studying Pestalozzi, this is the most important concept to grasp, so let's take a more in-depth look at his philosophical standpoint and his method of schooling. Pestalozzi was heavily influenced by the work of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, Rousseau is quite a complex character, and we don't have time to unpack all of his ideals in this video. Let's just say that when it comes to education, at least, Rousseau believed that human beings were good by nature and that education should serve to empower people to cooperate in society. If you really want to study Rousseau, his most famous work on education is entitled Émile. Check it out. Pestalozzi felt the same way as Rousseau about the role of education and the nature of human beings. He believed that all children deserved an appropriate education, regardless of background. Of course, given his experiences, he was particularly focused on the inclusion of poor children. In order to achieve the type of educational system he desired, he focused on what has been summarized as the Pestalozzi method. Let's unpack that a bit. When it comes to the head, Pestalozzi believed that there were some basic things that a child needed to learn. Most importantly, a child needed to learn objectivity. A child needed to be able to observe the world around them and hone their natural ability to make informed decisions. This was obtained through experiences guided by the teacher and rooted in an emotionally safe education environment. One of Pestalozzi's most well-known methods for teaching this ability is through the direct observation of objects. Students would observe objects and directly interact with them in order to develop hypotheses. For Pestalozzi, sensory input